recording. Yes, we are. I'll call to order this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, November 7th at 2 p.m. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Sim people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. We do have one late item that I'm aware of so far, and that will be 16.2, YCS Letter of Support for New Horizons Grant. So under new business, 16.2. Are there any other light items anybody would like to add to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder for adoption of the agenda with laid out? Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Herring. All those in favor? Pretty sure you put your hand up. Okay, well there you go. You're in the minutes of the agenda now. Just go with it. Are there any declarations of known conflict of interest or pecuniary interest that anybody would like to declare at this point? Seeing none, moving on to adoption of the minutes of council meetings. 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held July 11th, 2023. There's a recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. Any questions? I should ask that anyways, but because I thought you had a question. Councillor Bratton, go ahead.
Why was that one back in to approve?
Mr.
I tried
Prime,
to
if you could
find what the difference was.
Yes, Your Worship. So this came back to Council last meeting, and we made the amendments to a couple resolutions there, but the fully modified minutes did not come to Council at that time. So this is just the full minutes being adopted as amended.
Okay, thank you for that. I should have got that beforehand. All those in favor? Thank you. Minutes of the regular council meeting held October 17th. Mover and a seconder on that, or any questions? Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? And there we go. Moving on to item 10.1, DVP 23-02 Dunlake Road. There are several reports, information, but does anybody from council or from staff wish to explain this one or at all?
Yes, Your Worship. We do have TNRD Planning Services here to discuss these DVPs.
Excellent, thank you. Is that Ms. Perotti or?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Okay. Hi, everyone.
I see Perotti, and I think that we're going to be talking to somebody from BDO, but no, sorry. I'm
not here to talk to you about numbers or math. I will leave that to my cousin. He is very good at that. I can talk to you about development variance permits, though.
Excellent.
So I am just going to share my screen. I'm assuming I have that capability.
Yes, we can see your report. Thank you.
Wonderful. So I'll just give a little overview. This is for development variance permit 2302 on Dunlake Road. This report is to consider a variance to provide an exemption to upgrading a portion of Dunlake Road in accordance with bylaw number 111, a bylaw to establish subdivision and development standards, highway standards. Paving the road is a condition of a subdivision application. Today, Council is being asked to authorize a notice of intent distribution prior to issuing the development variance permit. If Council authorizes this distribution, a staff report and new recommendation will be brought forward for consideration following the neighborhood mailout and response period. The property is located on Dunlake Road along the southern boundary of the District of Clearwater. The applicant is in the process of seeking approval for a 10-lot subdivision, and a condition in the preliminary layout review is to pave that portion of Dunlake Road fronting onto the proposed lots. Dunlake Road is classified as a local road within a rural area and is currently a gravel road. The applicant has applied for a variance as the road is in good condition and suits the rural nature here. Should this portion of the road be paved, it would remain unpaved east and west of the proposed subdivision, which may pressure the district to develop the other portions of the road in addition to maintaining and managing the paved portion. Staff recommend proceeding with the notice of intent distribution. And that's all I've got for DVP 2302.
Okay. Questions of council through to Ms. Perotti? Basically, I think this is so we don't have to force them to pave the road that we unpaved, in essence. But there also would be some improvements to the drainage and that sort of thing under this. But maybe you could just explain notice of intent, because this really hasn't come up before in at least this last term. Why are we doing a notice of intent, and what's the process with that?
Well, typically notice of intents do happen with development variance applications, but I don't know the last time we processed a development variance permit application. So essentially what we'll do is we will send a notice to all property owners within a 100-meter radius of this property, letting them know of the variance and letting them know where they can get additional information. And then at another subsequent meeting, likely, I believe we have it in December, we will bring this variance back where you can discuss it and we can let you know of any neighborhood input that we've received. And then you would be making the decision on the variance.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions? If not, there is a recommendation on this one. The council issue a notice of intent to consider approval of development variance permit number DVP 2302 on Dun Lake Road. What is the wish of council? Okay, thank you, Councilor Matheson. Seconded by Councilor McKenzie. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that moves forward. Thank you. And on to Barber Road. This one's an interesting one.
All right, I will begin with this again. So this is for development variance permit application -23-03 at 1056 Barber Road. The owners have applied to vary the definition of dwelling unit in zoning bylaw number 133 to allow 2 sets of cooking facilities in 1 dwelling unit. The owners are requesting a second kitchen for canning, preserving, crafting, and hosting family and friends. Again, council today would be authorizing the distribution of a notice, and a new recommendation and staff report will be brought forward following the neighborhood mail-out and response period. The property is zoned RL1 Rural and designated Rural Resource in the Clearwater Official Community Plan. It is located on the eastern edge of the District of Clearwater's municipal boundaries. 1 single-family dwelling, manufactured home, or duplex are permitted uses, and a carriage suite, garden suite, or secondary suite are permitted as accessory uses. The owners would like the option of creating a suite in another area of the home, perhaps above the attached garage. However, the second kitchen in the basement cannot become a suite in addition to a suite in another area of the house. A condition of the development variance permit is if the second kitchen in the basement is converted into a separate suite, DVP-23-03 would no longer be applicable. The owners are retiring to Clearwater from Alberta and wish to have a second kitchen for canning and processing of produce that will be grown on their property. The second kitchen will accommodate equipment such as large pots, jars, electric food mills, and other items, and more importantly, provides flat, easy access from the yard to the secondary kitchen. In addition, the owners have a large family, and a second kitchen would allow more space to prepare and accommodate guests. This proposal is supported by Clearwater Official Community Plan policy, which encourages landowners to produce their own food products and byproducts and supports diverse housing types to accommodate diverse housing opportunities. Staff recommend council proceed with issuing a notice of intent and gather public input. And that concludes my presentation on these, unless you guys have any questions for me.
Questions on this one? Councillor Herring.
So I'm just curious if anyone knows why this is something that we regulate in our zoning bylaw specifically. Just because I think, you know, my logic here is that second kitchens are really common culturally for some cultures. You have more than one kitchen in the house normally. Why limit it to one kitchen? And then second of all, the idea that there'd be sort of a restriction if they were ever to turn it into a suite, that the variance would go away. Aren't we trying to encourage suites?
Yes, and you know, I can, if anybody from staff wants to tackle that, but I think you're correct on both of those, and I think that provincial legislation that's coming down the pipeline is probably going to negate the need for this, but this also speaks to, you know, the potential need for a board of variance where these things don't come to council. But I'll let Mr. Thackeray speak to this as well.
Just through the chair, there are significant changes coming. There are actually changes tabled today in the legislature that I think are going to speak to a lot of this. And I think there's a lot of merit in simplifying and streamlining our legislation anyway at the local level. And I think it's going to, there's some, I think, reasonable guesstimate that it's going to go away. Typically, I think I haven't seen all the legislation yet, but one of the things I was going to recommend was a delegation of authority. So routine things like this can just be dealt with by the planner or staff or whatever. But we'll see. But I think we're going to tackle this and then over this quarter and next quarter in 24. So thank you.
Other questions? If not, Councillor Sim.
I'm going to move the recommendation only because I'm super envious of 2 kitchens.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor? And thank you, Ms. Brody, for your time. Have a good afternoon.
You're welcome. Ciao for now.
Thank you. Nothing under unfinished business or item 12, public or statutory hearings. Moving on to the mayor's report. October 25th was the council budget workshop. That was a good first deep dive into the budget process. On the 26th, I had all day TNRD meetings, which is interesting. 27th, I got my official Poppy from the Royal Canadian Legion here in the office. So Wayne has taken over those duties. November 2nd was I think it was last Thursday, it was Clearwater Wildfire Roundtable hosted by Mike Simpson, Fraser Basin. A lot of discussion on emergency evacuation plans, fire smarting, what happened this last summer, drought conditions, river conditions, a lot of insight from everybody that attended, which was basically all the fire departments from Vaven V through to Blackpool/Little Fort, because they run together. People from BC Wildfire, people from Timber Service, BC Timber Sales, TNRD Emergency Management, and just a deep dive into what happened over the last year, what we need to fix coming into other years, and sort of an acknowledgement that that there's going to need to be a lot more work done on this with the conditions that we face this year that seem to be predicting the future for the next couple of years, as well as significant legislative changes that are coming down for emergency management in BC that are happening now, and we're going to need time to digest them. But it looks like this is going to add significant complexity and cost to local governments. And we may have to work in ways that we've never really had to do before. But yeah, it's early days, and then my understanding is that the CAO took about 6 or 7 pages of notes just on that one at a recent meeting that he attended. And I'm hearing the same thing from other jurisdictions, other mayors, other CEOs out there in the world, that this is going to change significantly how we look after situations like this in the future. The 31st, handed out candy with Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Matheson, here at the DOC. I think we had about half what we usually have for kids coming here, but that was a lot of fun. I've also done some outreach to Mascon and TELUS based on some direct to me complaints, as well as some stuff percolating out there on the various info boards, to try to get an update to see where they are at with projects inside and outside of the District of Clearwater to make improvements. So they have reached back, but to say that they will send me more information, but I don't have that information yet. So hopefully I can get them to present to council at some time in the near future as well, so we can all have an update. There is a conversation going on with the TNRD. Apparently there is a grant available for air ambulance landing pads. So there's a discussion that needs to be had on that as to whether or not that was something that the District of Clearwater would like to apply for, or if the TNRD would like to apply for it. But that's in its early stages at this particular point. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now. Moving on to Councillor Bratton.
Good afternoon. So October 25th, we had the budget workshop, and that was very informative. Thank you, Director of Finance, Ms. Klassen. Ha, I got it right. and so that was good. Halloween. I just would like to commend our community, how well behaved most everybody was this year. I was able to hang out with my grandchildren up in Weyerhaeuser. And I'm of the belief that where you live is where you trick or treat. And this year I actually had to go where they live, so because I'm in Sunshine Valley, they're in Weyerhaeuser. And what an awesome feeling of community togetherness. There's a couple families in there that were handing out, you could sit and have a fire and have hot chocolate. I just thought, and hot dogs, like, it was just fabulous, and I just love the community spirit. So hopefully, I know this has been going on for a few years, but I actually got to participate this year, and I thought that was just wonderful. So kudos to the families that provide those, because it was free. And the one family had Indian food and hot dogs and hot chocolate that was super fancy, according to my granddaughter, because there was sprinkles and whipped cream. Anyhow, and so that was just well done. Fireworks, thank you to the fire departments. That was fantastic. Grandkids just loved that. And cruise and treats. Every first responder did a fantastic job. We tried to hit everyone. I think I missed one. But yeah, they were, even MCFD had a spot out there, and they were all dressed up. And I just think this is just another point of how our town comes together and participates in functions. And it just is really wonderful to see. Just a reminder that Remembrance Day is coming up on the 11th. So if people come and pay respects, that's will be at the Cenotaph. Participated with Ken. I'll let him say what he was doing with Ryan Keeley to appreciate him, but it was a fantastic little event, and you did a really good job. Just wanted to say it was well done. I'm going to talk a little bit about online chatter. As we're getting into the colder times, winters on its way, I would like people that like to get online to reflect on how they're putting their comments forth, and have 3 things to think about before you type. First, is it a constructive suggestion? Is it helping the situation? And is it kind? And if no is an answer to any of those, maybe you might want to keep scrolling. Maybe you don't want to type at all. Think about, would I talk to this person to their face these words that I'm typing? If that's a maybe no, maybe don't type it. And let's keep it kind and respectful, and just a good thing to think about.
Thank you for your brave service moderating various chat groups online. Thank you for that. Councillor Frizzle.
Thank you. I also attended the budget workshop. Thank you, Ms. Clausen. That was very informative. I also attended the Chambers of the Year event, and congratulations to all the nominees and winners, and to the Chamber for hosting. It was a really good event, and I think everybody really enjoyed themselves. I also attended the evening with Ryan Keeley, our Olympic champion. And Ryan aspires to have the morals and values of the superheroes that he loves, and I think we need to aspire to be more like Ryan. He was very inspirational that evening, and you can say the rest about him, but I just was very impressed. I attended the Tourism Wells Gray meeting yesterday. They've started the renovations in the info center. They've got their new heater in there, and they've got a new staff room, and they're going to continue with working in there over the winter. So it'll look new, hopefully, by the time it opens up in the spring. They're also looking to get back to attending trade shows, and they're looking for ways of encouraging people to come to Clearwater and the North Thompson Valley and spending more time other than just coming through on a bus and having lunch and leaving again. So they're working on different ideas, which was very encouraging to hear. And the transition is starting for Claire Hanna to be returning. She'll be doing part-time January and February as Amber Benoit leaves probably in January, and Claire will be full-time again in March. The triple-decker trails, the trail over here at Dutch Lake, it's moving forward. They've confirmed the staging site to bring in for the helicopter. Local blocks should be delivered tomorrow. Bridge timber has been delivered, the bridge lumber has been delivered, and the contractor is making progress. So so far the weather's cooperating, so hopefully that'll be done before the snow falls. And switching hats here for a minute. As the seniors coordinator, I have become aware just in the last week of 2 cases of older adults being financially abused by family members. And it is very important to reiterate to everyone, if you see something, say something. Even if you're not sure, there's lots of places you can contact. You can talk to them, you can talk to the RCMP, you can talk to me, there's numbers that I have here. I have asked staff to put up on the website how to assist an adult who's abused, neglected, or self-neglecting. It's a decision tree and what you can do if you see something. So I'm really encouraging everyone to just be aware if you're seeing an elder person and you're not sure that they're doing as well as you think they should be, just check. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Herring.
So I attended the budget workshop as well. I thought it was great. It's a good start to hear what the priorities are for staff and where we'll go from here. It's going to be really interesting, I think. Other than that, just wanted to flag that it's still bear season, still seeing tons of garbage that's been dragged all over the area, particularly in the flats. Lots of people leaving their garbage unprotected, and it ends up in their neighbor's yard, ends up around the street. So if you have an issue, if your garbage gets dragged out, maybe clean it up. Do your best to secure it a little better for the bears, because unfortunately, as we saw earlier in the year, if the bears become a problem, then it's unfortunately the bears that end up suffering.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. Just want to thank staff for putting together a budget workshop that I had the joy of being at for all of 20 minutes before I was called away to a work emergency. So I look forward to catching up with some of that, but I trust the colleagues when they say we're heading in the right direction, so I'm looking forward to that. On Halloween, I assisted Councillor Matheson and Mayor Blackwell for the cruise and treats at the district office here. A little under attended from past years, but maybe that was just a little earlier. I don't know. It was good. Clearwater Fire Department for their annual fireworks. I know a lot of people in this town look forward to that every year, and not just my kids, but a lot of them, and it was busy in there. So I just want to thank them for putting that together again. It's definitely something we all look forward to. And want to congratulate all the nominees and winners at the Chamber of Commerce Business Excellence. I unfortunately was unable to get back from work in time to make that, but even just being nominated is an honor. And I want to thank everyone, winners, nominees. It's people like you that make this town go around. So thank you to you. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks for catching a couple of those things. Yeah, chamber nominations, but also fireworks. To your point, noting a lot of the communities in other parts of this province that have such a difficulty on Halloween because they don't have a centralized fireworks display that everybody's doing it in every single neighborhood, and I think think City of Kamloops had something like 30 or 40 fire calls, including a couple $1 million worth of or a couple $100,000 worth of damage over Halloween. The fact that we actually do it here as an organized event that everybody attends in one place, I think solves a lot of problems because it is so good and such high quality. A lot of people just stop doing it at their own homes. So I think that's an excellent point. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just touching on your internet speed comment. I know I have been with Mascon for a while, and I've had really good service for a long time, up to 100 megabytes upload, and it was lightning fast. About 2 weeks ago, it dropped. My upload is now faster than my download. It's about 6 megabytes, and it's basically ground my business to a halt. So I think, and I understand it's community wide right now. It's affecting everybody. And I don't know what the reason for the sudden drop is, but it's going to have a huge impact on people that are moving here to do work from their homes. So I think that's something we really need to start pushing on a bit. Budget workshop, attended it, got a lot out of it. I kind of finally cleared some cobwebs out of my brain and made some connections, and it was really worthwhile. Chamber event was good. Congratulations to everybody that went and was nominated in the awards. I did a presentation at the Legion for the first responders, their dinner. They had a great meal, and it was pretty well attended. It was pretty full there. Food bank, just a quick mention on that. They're seeing a very large uptick in working families coming in. The food prices have hit them very hard, and it's a demographic that they haven't seen before. So it's a little bit worrying about the amount of food that's going out the door. So I think the more support that we can give them community-wise, the better. It's just a sign of the times with the way things are becoming so expensive between gasoline and food and everything else. It's hitting some families really badly. Halloween was great. I ate more chocolate than I gave out. 1 for you and 2 for me. I had the sugar shakes for about 3 hours. But yeah, it was good. Lots of cute kids out. We held an event for our superhero weightlifting Olympic champion on Friday at the Evergreen Acres. And I've got to say that community space at Evergreen Acres in the new building is amazing. They've got, I think it's probably the most technologically advanced community hall in the whole area. And it's just very impressive. We had about 30 to 40 people attend. It was well attended. It's about all we could really fit in there. And Ryan was his usual self. He was honest, genuine, straightforward, and humorous, and an inspiration to everybody that was there. He has that gift of being able to communicate with people and connect with people on a very personal level. No matter the size of the crowd or anything, he just speaks from the heart. And everybody was very touched by his conversation that he had with the crew or with the group. It was very personal, and he comes across as an inspirational person. I firmly believe he's got a future in representing people with disabilities in the future and changing the conversation, because he is very, very impressive. And he stays so humble through all of this. He just winning a world championship, and he's just back in Clearwater, and it's like, yep, I'm back to training. It's not a big deal. But yeah, thanks for everybody that showed up. It was great, and I would like to have him come to council at some point and meet everybody in council and do a little talk with them. But his training schedule doesn't allow him to come on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, or Fridays. So we'll have to figure that out down the road, but it will happen. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting that. Councillor Sim.
Councillor Matheson, thanks very much for bringing up that point about the food bank. I wondered if you wanted to work time and do a notice of motion. The council is typically donated to the food bank, and that could maybe get on the next agenda. I just share that for you to do, because it's good involvement and good information. And you're right, the lower middle class is certainly bumping up against shoulders right now.
Yeah, and on that note, thanks to the councillors and members of the community that went and talked to management at Bilo. Patterson Group management while they were in town to advocate on all sorts of fronts, including for the food bank. Continue with your report.
Thanks. Just the community shout outs that have been done, budget workshop, thank you very much. Also a big appreciation for the leaky faucet bulletin. That's been fun, which is good there. Also to the fire department. And the other things that have been attended is tomorrow I'm doing a presentation with BC Healthy Communities on diversity, equity, inclusion for municipalities. So to participating them, and I'm hoping that they're going to be able to bring that to our council. They've expressed interest if we're interested in doing that type of a concept and doing one-on-one with us and using us as a test community for other councils. Also attended the BC Public Schools Employers Association conference last week. Some of the topics that are coming down the pipeline that employers need to be aware of: human right obligations for employers, duty to accommodate, performance management for excluded staff, race-based harassment and unconscious biases. The session that I found really interesting was employee contact on social media. And also the legal and societal expectations for employers around that. So there seems to be a shifting landscape, especially around the human rights obligations and the duty to accommodate. So that's something that, I found really interesting that way. Chamber of Commerce event was just a big success and really fun, and nice to see how that they are really rebranding themselves and connecting. Thank you to Councillor Frisnell and Councillor Matheson for coming. Mayor Blackwell, you were missed. Your absence was noticed and extended as you weren't able to.
Yes.
But anyway, you would have enjoyed it. And then just the acknowledgement for our Citizens of the Year, Pearl Broadswick and Linda Selby. It was really nice to see them acknowledged after all the years of hard work and all the contributions that they've done to this community. Also attended a Yellowhead Community Services with Joanna for her food hub meeting. She's going to be doing some great things with the 3-year funding project, and that involved bringing together a lot of the community partners, recognizing also that the schools have received 3 years of funding through the federal or through the provincial government, and implementing breakfast and lunch programs there, as well as Starfish backpacks, which are new for us. So it is something to be aware of, is that inflation is hitting. We also, on the health front, it's maybe important that we note that the hospital is going to be looking for some assistance in supporting their recruitment efforts for nurses. There are potential for 7 nurses they're looking for spaces, and we need 13. So some notes there. The other news that's coming down from the hospital that we'll need to be alert to, especially with the auxiliary, is our x-ray machine, which sees 234 patients a month. Its end of life was 2013. They're not even sure if they can get parts for it. The thing that I found really startling is that anybody who's training has never even been trained on this machine. So they're looking, it's becoming obsolete. So there's certainly some concern. So I think that that's going to be on the radar for our community. And also on the health front, our PCN, primary care network funding envelope has come down. And we'll be talking about that at the local health planning table, and I'm looking forward to the CAO and the mayor being able to join us for that. It is going to be some additional funding for allied health partners, perhaps nurses. Our community gets to tell the story of what we would like to see. And I think one of the things that's really important in that is Heidi Schilling has mentioned that it's been a year now since the Barrier Emergency Department has been shut down. And so a lot of their patients who have been included in the Kamloops funding is now coming to Clearwater. So although the funding has been released for our community, we're actually short because we're taking on more people from other communities. So it's an important meeting and an important next chapter for Clearwater. And I think I will just, and last, I just want to thank Miss Creed. I see she's out in the audience, and I want to thank you very, very much for all the events that you're putting on and the engagement that you're doing, and certainly the work with the DEI. And you just have a way of just sort of celebrating different pockets of our community and bringing them alive. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. I have just put in an alarm in my phone as we have the hospital board meeting on Thursday morning to say, hey, what about our X-ray machine? Thank you for all the rest of that too. That's an impressive list from everybody. I'm not seeing a CEO report in this one, so we'll move on to news business staff reports. There is the discussion on the volunteer brunch and a recommendation. Okay. Ms. Culp, do you want to speak to this at all, or?
Well, I saw what was discussed at the previous council meeting, and then I actually was able to chat a bit with Councillor Frizzle and Councillor Sim on potential dates. So I included that in the report. There is a volunteer week in April. So instead of having it in the winter, we just suggested to move it to then. And that would be our kickoff for Volunteer Week, as Kawiri and I are planning events for that week anyways. So we thought that would fit in really nicely.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Sim?
Yeah, I think that sounds like such a great way to bring in spring. And I just wondered, Councillor Frizzle, is that also coinciding with the event that you're doing for the seniors that week? Is there overlap, or is that another thing? Because I think what you've done well, which we spoke about at the last meeting, was building events all together.
Hasn't been a date set yet, so we can make sure it works around it.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, it sounds great. I was just thinking today about how many volunteers we bump into every single day who make this community work.
amazing.
Yeah.
Further, Councillor Bratton? Nope. Okay. Itching? Itching or moving the motion? Because there is a motion that.
I just got one quick one.
Oh,
here.
sorry, Councillor Masson.
I'm just curious. I'm not sure how this all falls into things. Is there a way of just making this part of the regular calendar event for events, where we don't have to revisit this every year, where it's just planned, resourced, and financed for that time period?
That would be something we would add to the budget process.
Yeah, I think it's important, just to get it from coming back every year, time and time again, for all these different events. We should just be able to recognize which ones we're supporting and task it and, allocate manpower and budgeting for it. And it's done.
Thank you. So, yes. Any further questions? And if not, would somebody like to move this motion and second this motion? Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor Matheson. We're going to go with that. Math Kenzie. No further discussion. All those in favor. Thank you. So the next one is the late item 16.2. On table, you have a letter from Christine Peterson from YCS. YCS is seeking a letter of support from the District of Clearwater to be included as part of their submission to the Pan-Canadian Stream of the New Horizons for Seniors program. It says the program invites eligible organizations to apply for $1 to $5 million over 4 to 5 years to build a collective capacity of organizations to recognize and address barriers to social inclusion faced by vulnerable seniors. And I don't know if they have a particular project, but I think this is a worthy cause. Any questions? Councillor Sim.
Yeah, I certainly would be keen to do a letter of support, especially since what Councillor Frizzle has shared with us about that vulnerability, and this seems like the ideal program to move through. What I would be curious about is if they would include the seniors program into their funding envelope, because I think that would be helpful to us as a municipality. There are no answers in this. I don't know if we can write that in a letter of support, ask it. I don't know what the next steps, but it would be a shame to try and replicate something that's already there and just roll it.
I think there's Councillor Frizzle's going to be in conflict of interest on this, but regardless, I think it's time to have a conversation with Ms. Peterson about Christine and perhaps even the YCS board, just to find out what priorities are happening and things are going on in their world again. Be nice to have a presentation to council at some time in the future. But yeah, I think we could reach out and just kind of, before signing off this letter, find out what exactly their intention is with it. I think it's probably noble regardless, but yeah. So do you need a recommendation? I guess we do. Somebody want to make a motion that we write a letter of support for this? Thank you, Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor Sim.
Just before we put that on the floor,
Yeah.
I am wondering is if in the dialogues to staff, if there was a deadline. I can't read it in the application or I've missed it.
There we go. Yes, here, Your Worship, they have just started at the moment in looking at the application. So it's just in a concept phase right now. So they're looking at what concepts they have in order to build and support the community. So we know that there's other organizations already doing some of the work, like Lynn is with the seniors. So they would then be receiving the money and then dispersing it to the different organizations as they're needed for those programs within their concept plan. So they first have to come up with 2 letters of support in order to submit their application for their concept plan. And then if it's liked, then they'll go to the second phase of the application.
Great, thanks very much. With that information, what I am wondering is to activate what the mayor has suggested is having a meeting with Yellowhead first, just to get an idea, so that we're not doing just a blanket letter, so maybe it can be designed a little more accordingly. But if council prefers just to move with the letter of support, that's fine too. But I think it's a great opportunity to have a conversation before moving forward.
No, and I'm fine with that. I would still like to move this because I think we're going to end up with a letter of support anyways, but I think we need to have some context before we actually write and sign the letter. Mr. Prime.
And Your Worship, just to clarify, there was the deadline for November 15th, so they are short on time for this.
Okay, they aren't short on time. Okay.
Motion to write a letter of support.
It's already moved in second. We're now just voting on it. Sorry. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you.
Who seconded that?
And thank you for abstaining from voting. Yes. As an employee of YCS and Seniors Coordinator, yes.
That's not it. Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, whether you're a senior?
No, I'm the seniors coordinator.
Oh, yeah, I said that. Yeah. So many hats.
Most of us have to abstain.
Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. Sorry, I just need to catch up on my bits of paper here. So, we have bylaw number 286/2023, amendment bylaw number 168, subdivision and development services bylaw. I'll let staff speak to this a little bit. Just you have some notes here. Okay. We're just going to adopt. Anyways, so can I get a motion to adopt?
I'll make the motion to adopt.
Thank you, seconder. Thank you. District of Clearwater bylaw number 286, 2023, a bylaw to amend bylaw 168, 2017, subdivision and development servicing standards. Whereas section 137 of the community charter provides that the power to adopt a bylaw includes the power to amend or repeal it. And whereas the council of the district in Clearwater wishes to amend bylaw number 168, now therefore the council of the district of Clearwater in open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the bylaw 286, 2023 amendment to the bylaw 168, 2017 subdivision and development services, development servicing standards. Sorry, there's an extra "the" in there. All those in favor? And that is adopted. Thank you. Moving on to committee of the whole. There is a recommendation to enter into committee of whole meeting of the Parks, Recreation and Social Development Committee. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded. Who's chairing that? Is that you, Councillor or Matheson? Go ahead. You have the chair. I think Councillor, is it? Who is chairing this?
I think it's supposed to be me.
Is it? Well, congratulations. Councillor Bratton, you have the chair.
Thank you very much. There's a report on the floor. Would staff like to speak to it?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So, just circling back, we had a staff report with the public art policy that we brought up a few times. The last time that it was spoken about, we decided that we perhaps needed a bit more space to discuss all the ins and outs of it. So just to illustrate the staff report, I just created a very brief presentation that just goes over some of the information in the staff report, and then also just some items that as staff we felt would be very important to include in a potential policy that we would draft. So this is just opening up a conversation about public art. Let's see if my clicker works. So to start, I thought I would just talk about what is public art. And some of you noticed right away in the 3 policies that I provided where Tofino wrote, it doesn't have to look like art. And I think that's something that we can really keep in mind too when we're talking about this. So public art is not something that has to be standardized, and it can be much more than what might be traditionally viewed as art. Lots of people will think of murals, they'll think of statues, but this can be many, many more creative things. And why is public art important? So public art contributes to a community's identity, fosters community pride and a sense of belonging, and enhances quality of life for its visitors and its residents. So really, really important to communities. So all of that being said, as we can see in the past, is there is not a current policy that exists. Developing and establishing a public art policy would help to ensure that there is a cohesive and agreed upon theme of public art in Clearwater that also represents local culture, heritage, character, what our values are as a community, how we want to represent ourselves, what we want to showcase, and then also how we want visitors to feel when they're in our space. Another big note that I wanted to talk about that I noticed from other communities when I looked at their policies, but putting an emphasis on local diversity and culture. So the artwork in town should reflect and encourage the diversity and artistry of both the traditional and contemporary artists in the community, with a primary focus on incorporating Schwetmic, Simc artwork into public initiatives and projects. So the following, I need to keep up with both presentations. So the following few slides, I just added in a few notes of interest, just items that I thought were important that I took from the 3 public art policies that I provided. As you can see in the package, Tofino was 32 pages long. Bowen Island was 14 pages. And Sydney was 1 page. And at first I really liked Sydney's, and then I realized that it did not cover the amount of information that would be helpful for not only procuring artwork and acquiring it, as well as maintaining it and just making sure that it was very cohesive across the board. Some of the overview points of interest that I noticed were in Tofino. They stated that in their mission statement that it is an invitation to celebrate our public spaces and to enrich the lives of Tofetians and our visitors, to connect at a local level and to reach out to a larger global community. It is an expression of our belief in the worth of the artistic endeavor and ourselves, the value of community participation, and the attraction of a vibrant public art collection. Bowen Island stated, the public art program will benefit the community through strengthening our identity and civic pride, enhancing public spaces for residents and visitors, demonstrating clear belief in the importance of culture, heritage, and creativity, and leaving a lasting legacy for future generations. Other points were their policy purpose and goals. So broadening cultural tourism and the expression of our cultural identity, sense of place and civic pride, encouraging meaningful community dialogue and idea exchange, increasing opportunities for the community and artists to participate in developing public spaces through artistic expression and cultural vibrancy, complement and or develop the character of Tofino's built environment to create distinctive public spaces. Bowen Island's desirability as a community by creating appealing environments in which to live, work, and play, honor, preserve, and encourage our cultural heritage and artistic diversity, promote civic identity through awareness and preservation of the community's history and cultures, strengthen the character and identity of the community through building and displaying a unique public art and cultural collection, increase the opportunities for local artists to create and display their work, and engage the community in discussions and decisions regarding public art projects. So I just included those because I think those are really important pieces when we develop this policy of what is our true intention with bringing public art into the space. The rest, I just reviewed both policies. Obviously, Sydney's was very short, so I included a few components, but here I just provided what I saw were components to a successful policy. I know many of you have way more experience with policy than I do, but this was what I gleaned from it. If you wanted me to go through it, or I just provided a brief overview.
Review is fine, I think.
Yeah. And then just having different appendixes of how to. One of the biggest conversations, I guess I should mention, that came up when we were talking about public art was how are we going to maintain it if there's graffiti, insurance, the time, the work. So just making sure that we address all of those items when we do move forward with this. And then just to finish, just a simple quote: a light in the darkness, a spark to ignite your imagination. Public art is a powerful tool that can be used to uplift, encourage, and inspire communities, and it has the power to heal. There is definitely no lack of different studies that I've come across that I could have definitely included in this, but I did not want to go into that much depth. But the well-being and the impact that this can have on communities, and especially with us being so rural and not having a lot around us as much as, say, a larger city center would, I think the impact that we could make with having public art would be tremendous. Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic. I love that presentation. And that quote, I want to take a picture of it. Well done. I agree with all of that. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say.
You're supposed to say, are there questions from council?
Any questions from council? Councillor Sim?
Thanks. I think that's an excellent way. I really liked how you included Tofino. I thought that they had a broad range, and I also think they addressed a lot of your questions about, what's the policy when it becomes unsafe, or when it becomes, its lifespan has come. So it did cover there. The one thing that I would be really keen on looking as a part of this would be placemaking, which council has talked about for several years, and invigorating our spaces that, sometimes you can shine a light on spaces that might be used for nefarious activity, and so it becomes something else, or how to replenish it. I would give an option for the Squamish Placemaking Society. I don't know if you've looked at them, but their goal is dedicated to enhancing Squamish's urban public spaces for a lively, inclusive, sustainable, safe, and healthy Squamish. So it speaks to a lot of the concepts that you've already identified in your report, and it's just a different way. What I also like about the placemaking is it implements the fact that British Columbia is going to have to look at our public spaces through a lens of accessibility, and how art can be incorporated into that. So I really appreciate the direction you're going, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Any other questions? Councillor Herring?
Just a concern with a lot of these policies when I read through them is I feel like they are geared towards accessing professional works of art, and things like resistance to vandalism, or condition and quality. It has to be of the highest quality. Things like this start to limit the amount of people who can participate in public art and change the narrative. Like when I read the Tofino one, I realized that if I wanted to create a piece of public art, I would have to be able to basically write a grant application of some kind, right? Like it might not be for a grant, but it would be the similar requirements. And I think in a community our size, it's going to exclude a tremendous amount of our local artists. That's one of the reasons I like the Sydney example. It's one page. It really prevents us from being too involved in it. But I did like from the other two examples the idea of a public art advisory committee, sort of like a third-party body that can maybe have that conversation. Because I, as a counselor, don't want to be in the position of judging art. I'm not the right guy. But I think that there are people in town who could do that. And then however we can keep this policy really minimalistic so that the bar is incredibly low, the people who live here can create the public space, and it doesn't need to meet some sort of big urban standard, be painted a certain way or anything like that.
Thank you. And Councillor Sim?
I think those are all really good points, and I think that that's why the concept of the placemaking is really important. So, for example, we've got a lot of those flower boxes around town. Public art can be as simple as having a kindergarten's class and it's laminated and put there with one of the quotes that has been explained. So it just invigorates almost spaces that we have. And you're right to having a community, because often when you are working with art and who represents us is the people to speak. I hate to say that might be a committee, but I'll save that for the next agenda title. But yeah, to your point, I don't think it has to be complicated. It has to be complicated, and I think we can really utilize some of the assets that we have. I think maybe that policy is looking at, I think this all stemmed from somebody wanting to do another mural and what that might mean. So, but I think there's the smaller efforts.
Ms. Culp?
Thank you. I just wanted to say also to Councillor Herring, I completely agree. And that was something that I also noted too, was just how in-depth Tofino's process was. When I started reading it, it was a bit overwhelming. But I completely agree. I'd love to see us keep it way more accessible to local artists and have the simplicity of the one-page document, but then my more concern would just be with having just more structure around the maintenance and the more municipal side of how we take care of it and how that looks. But yeah, not make it a huge process.
Councillor Frizzle?
I agree. I was just going to say that that's the beauty of doing the policy right now, is that we can create the policy with our own culture of whatever that is, and we'll make it how it fits us, not how it fits the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one thing.
Councillor Matheson?
Yeah, I love the idea. I'm for it 100%. I agree that there needs to be a policy put in place to budget for it and protect and all that. I think partnering with some organizations in the community that would probably empower them a lot too. I'm thinking of the Arts Club in town. And I know that they're in the senior center now and they're very active. And I think partnering with them, they would be a really good champion and to empower and get out to the schools. And, I think they would really be on it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
My only question is, do you need a recommendation today?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a me decision.
Yeah, we could stew on this for a while, or we could make a recommendation. My suggestion is a recommendation would be the committee of the whole recommend to council that council approve staff to draft a public art policy based on the successful art policy framework as laid out in the staff report.
Seconded.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And
All in favor?
thank you.
Any discussion? We all did it? Okay. Do do I ask to come out of the committee of the whole, or do we have more?
We have one more in here, but I don't know if this falls underneath your department. I think it does not. So I think I'll just take it. So there is a staff report related to committees, committee restructuring. And I think at this particular point, we probably just want to have a discussion about this. And Mr. Prime has done this report, so maybe I'll let him speak to this.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This primarily sort of came from discussion during strategic planning in March as to what our current structure looks like for committees, that it's not necessarily in line with other jurisdictions our size, with having the number of working groups we had that weren't necessarily even meeting or had convened at all. A lot of these were sort of created on paper and hadn't necessarily been implemented in any fashion. So trying to bring it back to sort of the strategic goals of good governance and just getting back to getting the house in order, as it were, and ensuring that we're meeting our legislative requirements for committees and kind of forming that base layer that can then be worked on later, added to as necessary, inclusive if that's an arts committee. It's not to preclude that any of those couldn't happen in the future, but looking at sort of the staff capacity and requirements of adding additional ones in the future. Do we have any questions from council?
Councillor Sim?
I'd like to know what that looks like. Like, do you enter into a committee of the whole and you, like, explain to me what it looks like, and I'll give you some parameters. So, for example, Logan Lake and Revelstoke, they've got very few committees, but those committees, they meet outside of council. So maybe it's a Tuesday at 11 a.m. and they've got their committee, and then those recommendations are brought back to the council table where you move into a council of the whole. What really impressed me about that is I looked in particular at Logan Lake. Their council meetings are an hour on average. So it just seemed to be a way to have it outside. Is that what you're thinking, or did you have another concept?
Councillor Sim, through Your Worship, it's an excellent question, and that's definitely a large motivator for this restructure, and that's to get it outside of council meeting. So it wouldn't be a committee of the whole internally to council anymore. Council can always choose to go into committee of the whole to debate a topic more holistically inside council if they choose. However, the scheduled committee of the whole would be either prior to council on Tuesdays, if that's what they agree upon, or on a separate day, if that's what that would be up to council to decide. But that is a large portion of my.
Further on that?
I do have a supplemental if I would. So with this report coming back, is there a redesign of the committees that we currently have? Like, we've got our sort of four that we had been our, at this point in time, I don't even know if they're standing or sitting or upside down or what they are. But what I did like about some of our other communities is that you could go onto the website and you could find where the economic, committee met. Like, you could see it, and it became easy, and it told a different narrative. What we've tried over the past year, I found it very complicated to go back and try and find minutes that related to, whether it be economic development, whether it be related to infrastructure. I couldn't follow it. So is that also part of this process? That the minutes would be separate, so you would see, let's say there's an infrastructure meeting on Tuesday at 11 and those minutes are brought forward, and if anybody wanted to go look at those minutes, they could see them separately on the website.
Yes, Councillor Sim, through Your Worship. There would be a streamlining, at least part of my proposal is there's a streamlining of committee of the whole. There would no longer be 3 separate committees of the whole, it would be 1.
Yes.
Part of that is so that we're not holding meetings just for the sake of holding meetings.
Right.
It's everything can kind of, and just in terms of timeliness, we don't always have enough to sort of warrant a meeting on just one topic, whereas we might have enough given the wide parameter we need to discuss a forestry issue. It can come to the committee of the whole, be discussed fulsomely, and then make a recommendation to council. As part of that, it would have separate minutes. It would be easier to locate anything that's discussed under committee of the whole. Answer your question.
Yeah, you did. And what I like about that is when it's assigned, and especially if a council person is assigned to it, it allows them to really understand the various moving parts of our district, so that there is that more in-depth knowledge. And I think that that's really helpful to move there. So I really appreciate this direction. My final question would be, would you consider going through the council agenda in the fact that if we were to bring something through to committee of the whole, that there would be a space where we could actually make recommendations, like move it into a regular council meeting?
Yeah, I think what you're going for is that if we have a committee of the whole meeting before a regular council meeting, then we.
No. So I'm saying, let's say we meet as the Economic Development Committee, just as an example, on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., right? And then we meet once a month. And then those minutes are brought forward to the next council meeting. So if we met September 1st, at the economic development meeting, they would come forward and, let's say, the September 25th council of the whole meeting. If there were any recommendations made there, they could be drawn out at the council meeting.
Yes. So
Is that tracking?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Thackeray. Or yeah. And this is my experience. Well, we used to do this. A recommendation would be brought forward at the committee of the whole, and then would be moved at the afternoon meeting or at the next meeting, depending on the complexity of it. But go ahead.
Yes, through the chair, I think there are some processes that could be refreshed in your procedures and processes to streamline how you make decisions. And I think this is what the intent and purpose is. And certainly there's a number of things that I think I would propose for council to consider. And we could certainly get into that just to make it more streamlined and more effective decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Just to supplement, even as you look at items 18.6 on today's agendas, as part of the Rise and report from the Committee of the Whole, the recommendations that the Committee of the Whole is making to Council will be presented to Council immediately following the Committee of the Whole. As part of a governance procedure, that would follow the same for Committee of the Whole meetings before Council. There would be a Rise and report during the meeting, regular Council meeting, to act on recommendations from the Committee of the Whole.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, because what you've just said, if I'm hearing it correctly, is a committee of the whole meetings before council meetings. So are you just suggesting one, or are we suggesting just going back and we're dividing it out to whether it be economic development, finance? I want to make sure I'm understanding this.
So my understanding, okay, this I think is our discussion.
Oh, okay.
In some senses. So TNRD, for example, has several subcommittees where 3 or 4 or 5 members of the board plus staff deal with things like solid waste, and those are created in an effort that a small group of the larger board of 27 people can analyze, discuss with staff, and make recommendations to the larger board, so 27 members of the board and the entire staff does not have to sit through a discussion on what color the recycling bins are going to be. Right? So I think maybe not something we're going to move here, but we're going to have a discussion as council as to what things do we want to continue to do and how do we want to do them. Take a committee that I'll use as an example, Forestry Working Group. At times it's been an incredibly important committee, but after a while of doing them monthly or bi-monthly, we were getting to the point where we were having a meeting where 20 minutes worth of business was getting done, and we were inviting people from halfway around the region to show up, often in winter, whereas under Committee of the Whole, we could just say, we would like to invite people that are in the forestry industry to have a discussion here as presenters, and we can have a discussion under forestry without actually having a forestry working group anymore. Portfolios is another issue. Is our councillors assigned to various portfolios? That can be something. Are you assigned to finance? Are you assigned to Parks and Rec? I mean, that could continue, and you could chair that portion of the Committee of the Whole meeting theoretically. But I think this is a much longer conversation that we need to have in our council retreat to decide what amount of land we want to cover at this desk, and how much involvement do we have. Councillor Herring, you look like you're ready to put a hand up.
So for me, I like the idea of one committee of the whole meeting for all the committees. I don't like having counselors assigned to different portfolios. I think it's like my own portfolio. To be honest with you, I don't think I could tell you what it is right now. And as we saw earlier, Teresa, like you were kind of like, oh, that's me, isn't it? Right. And I think so a lot of the times the planning of the meeting isn't happening that way anymore because we're not doing the dedicated, this one is happening on whatever, the 3rd of April, and that one's the 6th of June. I like the idea of one wider committee of the whole meeting. And, we're a small enough group. I think we can all contribute to the decisions on every topic. And I'd rather learn the whole business rather than focus on one small element of it.
Thanks. Further?
I just have a question. How does it alleviate how much work is involved if you don't have a meeting? The way you explained it there was that you wouldn't have a meeting, say with representatives from around the province to come for forestry, but they would come to a committee of the whole. How does that fix it?
So I'll explain it as general. We have one tomorrow.
Okay.
That is a special fund. Or regular one is Friday mornings. We will have, say, the Hat Creek Ranch. An agricultural preservation. Maybe ask us to first. Basically, it'll be 20. Instead of in the a little bit more broadly with a few more devil's advocates, it may take a half an hour, 40 session that we may not actually know what we're doing right now. So that you have the ability to sort of have a more free conversation without business.
Right.
I think it's good. Various aspects of local government will sometimes lead us. But yeah, I think the committee of the whole is just a little bit more open in the way look at various topics. It's a variety show versus in some aspects, but you still business. Councilor Sim.
Yeah, it's almost like having a wide funnel. So you've got the funnel, and then that narrow spout is what's presented at council. So you get that wider opportunity to address various things. It is a little more robust. The other thing that's interesting about having different groups is that you're relying on your colleagues to attend these various meetings, so the burden isn't to have to attend everything. And then it's brought in summary version. And I have found it really helpful.
Yeah.
Just from time management. Like, I don't want to be on the policy, the this, and this. It's too much time. But bring the recommendations to the table, discuss it, vote, move on.
The other big factor is every agenda is a staff task. If we get down to regular council meetings, committee of the whole, that's 2 agendas. Then special finance and things like that we need to do to make business happen. If we're not having to do a special agenda for Trails Task Force or Forestry Working Group or Events Working Group or the other 11 to 17 things that we had at one point here, staff isn't having to generate all those different agendas, and we don't think that as being much time. It was just an agenda, but it is a considerable amount of time and burden on staff, especially if those meetings have a regular scheduled rotation on a calendar. So this actually frees up a lot of time, and it actually creates a lot more flexibility. Okay, further questions, comments? Yeah,
Let-
Councillor Sim.
The other one is I'm just wondering is if you're suggesting that you'll go through the council procedure bylaw. It got to be quite meaty and quite long. And going through others, I'm wondering if there's room or you're thinking about doing a shorter version, a condensed, and making it more streamlined.
Yeah.
Either or.
So, I guess I don't. I'd rather hold my comments
Okay.
until I've had time to look at it.
Okay.
And then I'd like to comment on it. So,
Okay.
but yes, I would like to see how it's woven together. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we necessarily need to make a recommendation at this time, other than Mr. Prime, do you need direction to move forward on something, or are we going to tackle some of the discussion around this in the sort of council retreat that's going to be, you're going to get a doodle poll forward? But go ahead, Mr. Prime.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There are some options available on page 113. However, this can just be deferred to the council workshop if council so committee of the whole so chooses.
Thoughts? Mine is that we just defer this till after we have a meeting. There's things in here, especially around the emergency program bylaw. There's things that are merging so quickly that, but I would like to have a more open conversation. Councillor Sim.
The only one that I did wonder is if you wanted to pull out separately was to amend the terms of reference of the Accessibility Advisory Committee to incorporate the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. That is something that we're legislated to do, keeping a separate committee and rolling it in. I thought that was a really good part of this motion.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't know, do we I think we probably need to move that to the next regular council meeting as a motion. You want to make it a motion?
Well, it was a part, it is an option, so it could be a standalone motion.
Yeah, and that's where I'm thinking it probably should just be its own standalone motion outside of this discussion. And I don't necessarily know if it needs to happen in the committee of the whole. Mr. Prime, if for maybe.
Yes, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Sim, we can pull that recommendation out, and we can still rise and act on that in council after the committee of the whole, if that's what the committee of the whole chooses.
It's a great idea. So once we rise from committee of the whole, which is the next recommendation after we don't do a recommendation on this, you could make that as a recommendation.
Can that flow that way?
Um,
Yeah.
Sorry, Your Worship, through to Councillor Sim, we need to make
Yeah.
a recommendation as
To
a committee
move
of
it
the whole
out
to move.
to
Okay.
council.
So would you like to make that would you like to pull that section out and make it as a recommendation?
I'd like to move that council approve staff to amend the terms of reference of the Accessibility Advisory Committee to incorporate Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group as one select committee of council and return the amended terms of reference at the next possible council meeting. And it could be called IDEA, Inclusive Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility.
Wow.
I know.
Do I have a seconder on that? Okay. Any further discussion on this motion? Noting that this is happening everywhere, that other local governments are merging these two needs together because they're both basically legislated by the province of BC. All those in favor? Okay. Yeah. So you want to move us out of I might be a little lost here, but anyways.
The only other one is I don't know if we want to address the fact that we don't have a 2024 calendar as of yet. It is November. And maybe that recommendation should also be made to come back.
Do we need to move on that quickly, or is that something that that's something that happens as regular business? I think that,
Yes, Your Worship, it does. It is regular business that would be coming back in December. The hope was that this would sort of help guide the schedule. However, it can be done around the existing structure.
okay.
We could make a motion for a proposal to come forward as part of that working plan. Would that be helpful to staff?
Councillor Sim, through Your Worship, yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay. You gonna make a motion? Make another motion.
I'd like to, I just want to read it quickly. I'd like to make the motion that council approves staff to bring forward a proposed committee meeting schedule for 2024, as well as the acting mayor and committee of the whole rotation schedule, and to return with the finalized schedule and committee representation list at a future meeting of council.
Seconded, thank you. And discussion on that, yes, and we are at the 1 year mark since election, I think yesterday or the day before. So it is time to do rotation, and without having that list in front of me, I will just give you all heads up that I think we need to do some rotations of the various things that you all sit on as representatives council. So if we do that, we should bring that forward to the next council meeting as well.
I have one last question relating to this report. And that is, I'm not sure what, to draft a new bylaw to establish a board of variance. What is a board of variance?
So that's a whole other question, but I don't know if we necessarily need to move it at this one. Board of Variance basically deals with things like, I don't know, a second kitchen in a house that takes it out of the hands of having to do that at a council meeting. It becomes either
Okay, so
a
that is what was
delegated
intended
authority
by that.
or a smaller group of assigned human beings. But that is something that is generally done in legislated, but we haven't done it.
I would be keen to move that.
Councillor Sim, through your worship,
Yeah.
it is a legislated requirement in the community charter. If we have a zoning bylaw, we're required to have a board of variance.
There you go. The only caution I would have that there's a couple different ways to do it, and I think we need time to discuss that.
But if it's just to draft the bylaw, that's the only part of the recommendation that might get the ball started, if
I'll let
that's
Mr.
helpful.
Thackeray speak to that.
I would ask council to maybe just pause.
Okay.
Given what's been tabled today in the legislature with the changes in the planning legislation, I don't have a full sense of it. So just before we jump in, it might be worth, because they seem to be quite keen on removing some of the process for different reasons, but I don't have a good sense of it yet. But we'll get into it for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
will that get rid of Board of Variance? I don't think. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. There's a lot happening there. We have not voted to approve the last motion. So all those in favor of the last motion, thank you.
Oh, how about that?
Okay, I think I saw enough hands come up. So the one related to council's calendar schedule. So okay. Motion to rise out of committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. All those in favor. Now, Mr. Prime, do we need to remove these motions in the regular council meeting right now?
Your worship, yes. As a matter of rising and reporting, this would be where the chair of the committee of the whole would rise and report the recommendations that came from the committee of the whole.
Okay. Can we have those read back to us so we can move them?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
We can
18
let you catch up
points.
if you need a chance. Do you need a 5-minute recess to get it to speak?
I believe I have this all written down.
Okay,
Item
thank
18.6 would be recommendation that the committee of the whole recommends to council that council approve staff to direct a public art policy based on the successful art policy laid out in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a mover and a seconder on that one? Because this is how this works. Moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Matheson in a regular meeting. I hate to say this, but discussion. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor. Thank you. Next one, Mr. Prime, when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. And item 18.7 now would be that council approves staff to amend the terms of reference of the Accessibility Advisory Committee to incorporate the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group as one select committee of council and return the amended terms of reference at a future meeting of council.
Can I get a mover and a seconder on that?
Moved.
Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Bratton. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor. And there's one more.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 18.8 would be that council approves staff to incorporate the approved changes into the annual council and committee meeting schedule for 2024, as well as the acting mayor and committee of the whole chair rotation schedule, and to return with the finalized schedules and committee representation list at a future meeting of council.
Okay. Mover and a seconder on that one. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Bratton. Questions? If not, all those in favor. thank you for your work on this, Mr. Prime. Thank you to all staff for keeping that racetrack moving forward, because that was confusing to me, even though I haven't done it this way in a long time, but I've watched it done at TNRD. So there is nothing under item 19, correspondence response required. There are 2 under correspondence information only. One from Ian Bushfield and one from the Honorable Mitzi Dean. Any thoughts or comments on those? Seeing none. No notices of motion, I believe. We were talking about one earlier, but I don't think we did it. Comments from the public. And before you start, Annabelle, congratulations. I believe you are 25 years at the paper. 25 years. November 1st for the North Thompson Times. Yeah. Okay. Ah, there you go. But congratulations on starting 25 years at anything these days. So 24 on to 25. Congratulations. So, and now you have questions. Oh, interesting. That would have to be a discussion with Canada Post, I'm quite sure, because yeah, yeah. I think myself or staff can ask that question in a different way through different people, and we will try to find an answer as to. I do know that in other places there are garbage cans assigned, but we would need to do a little bit of research on that. Because that is their zone. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate sometimes. Okay. Thank you. We'll take that under advisement and see if there's something we can follow up on that. Any further comments from the public? Seeing none, we do need to move to in camera. That the meeting, there's a recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 of the community charter to discuss matters relating to a personal information of an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position, officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position of the municipality, and K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are in their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Can I get a mover and a seconder on that? Moved by Councillor Bratton, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor, and let's take it is now 3:27. See you at 3:40. We'll take a 13-minute break here.